An unprecedented pop culture phenomenon at the peak of its popularity and the end of its story. A billion-dollar franchise whose path forward was increasingly difficult to see, entrusted to the heroes with the smallest, furriest hands. Characters who were despised by the fans of the past, beloved by the fans of the future. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of the Ewok movies. Thank you to 80stees.com for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY to get 30% off your order today. Decorate your torso with your favorite comic book heroes from the 80s, or your favorite TV shows from the 90s, or your favorite movies from the 2000s. Actually, it's possible that those are all the same characters. If not, you've got plenty of choices at 80stees.com, built by a fan who loves all of this pop culture stuff, who had no choice but to make his own store to sell the kind of shirts he spent his whole life wishing he could buy. 80stees.com has something for everyone, from He-Man to Batman, from Baywatch to Xena, Shaun of the Dead, Lord of the Rings, Dial of Destiny, and Cocaine Bear. Don't get hung up on the name. 80stees.com started with the 80s, but they've got shirts for movies going back to the 1940s, TV shows from the 50s, holiday specials, wrestling, cereal, department store, soda, and candy brands. Give a shirt as a gift, buy an extra to keep for yourself. This is a way to give voice to the person you are on the inside, on the outside. You don't need to know the words to explain your love for retro gaming. Let your shirt tell the story for you. Click the link below and use code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order today. Again, that's code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order. And thanks again to 80stees.com. The Ewok Adventure, also known as Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, is a live-action television movie that originally aired Sunday, November 25th, 1984 on the ABC network in the US. Wrapped in a familiar package, it subverted expectations, telling a standalone Star Wars story untethered from the Skywalker saga that disregarded every facet of the mythology, exchanging the power of the Force for the power of love. A human family's star cruiser has crashed on Endor, a lush forest-rich moon with an atmosphere that can sustain a variety of life forms. Jeremy and Catherine are concerned that their children, Mace and Sindel, have wandered away too far from the crash site. It's dark and the kids might be lost, hurt, or worse. Jeremy and Catherine have no choice but to venture out into the darkness of the unknown world where danger lurks around every tree, and in some cases stands taller than those trees, like the giant Gorax who captures them before they can locate their children. That familial bond between the humans is mirrored by the Ewoks, as Deej and his wife are worried their sons have wandered too far into the woods and not returned in a timely manner. Deej sets out on a hang glider to search the woods from above. Not only does he find and rescue his sons, but he spots Jeremy and Catherine's crashed star cruiser. Deej takes a group of Ewoks to explore the crash site when they encounter Mace and Sindel, who can't find their parents. They return to the Ewok village where the human children learn to trust the Ewoks after they are able to provide them with food, medicine, and a safe place to rest. Sindel and Wicket become fast friends, and the group resolves to set out on a mission to rescue Jeremy and Catherine from the Gorax's castle. The journey ahead is long, treacherous, and fraught with terrible alien dangers. Their only hope is the friendship of the Ewoks, the power of their magic items, and a caravan of courage. Return of the Jedi hit theaters in May of 1983 in what most people assumed was the final chapter of the Star Wars saga. By the end of the movie, the Emperor was dead, Yoda was dead, Vader was dead, Jabba was dead, Boba Fett was dead. The second Death Star was dead, while Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Lando, 3PO, and R2 had a party with the Ewoks to celebrate the fall of the Empire. There wasn't much to build on, considering the realities of making movies on planet Earth in 1984. To continue where Return of the Jedi left off, commitments would need to be made by producers, actors, writers, directors, and, most importantly, the audience. Were any of them on board for more Star Wars after 3 movies in 6 years?
I don't care.
Between 1977 and 1983, there was plenty of additional media outside of the 3 films, but the vast majority of it was books, comics, games, and other licensed materials that even Lucas himself didn't consider part of the actual Star Wars story. If he didn't create it, if it wasn't in the films, he wasn't bound by it. The films dictated where all the licensed media went, not the other way around. There was one television show in November of 1978, a relatively high-profile holiday special that included several of the key characters played by the actors from the movies, hot on the heels of its incredible box office success. The direct result of naivete, inexperience, and a series of bad decisions that Lucas swore would never happen again. If Star Wars was going to succeed on television, he was going to have to be more directly involved. Ever the shrewd business person, he also knew that the key to keeping his productions independent was keeping his bank account full. To that end, he knew exactly where he wanted to start with the next chapter in the Star Wars saga. Despite the protestations of older, serious fans who felt like Star Wars was ruined, the Ewoks played a major role in the success of the franchise. From a narrative standpoint, beating back the Imperial forces on Endor while Han and Leia deactivated the shield generator for the Death Star, and from a financial standpoint, accounting for a metric crap ton of licensed merchandise. Action figures, stickers, school supplies, board games, costumes, home furnishings, books, coloring books, records, trading cards, puzzles, candy, clothing. It cannot be overstated how popular the Ewoks were with Star Wars fans under the age of 10. That some of the smallest, seemingly harmless creatures in the galaxy using handmade weapons and Home Alone combat tactics defeated the overwhelming power of the Empire, a Dark Lord of the Sith and his sidekick Darth Vader, sent a message that everyone could be a hero in this fight, and by God were they cute! In 1984, Lucas was recently divorced from his wife Marcia, with whom he had adopted a daughter, Amanda. It was with 3-year-old Amanda in mind that he conceived the idea for an Ewok-centered story in the world of Star Wars. She represented the demographic he hoped to reach in general and in specific. From there, he recruited a team to help him develop the story and bring it to television. Thomas G. Smith, previously of Lucas's visual effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, fresh off of Return of the Jedi and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, acted as producer. Bob Carrao collaborated on Lucas's story idea, turning it into a screenplay. The project ballooned when it became clear to Smith that networks weren't interested in a single 30-minute Star Wars episode. However, ABC in particular would entertain the idea of a 2-hour movie of the week. Emmy winner John Cordy was picked to direct, partially due to his portfolio of television work and partially because he was Lucas's friend and neighbor in California. Lucas's kernel of an idea had to be stretched out in a way that further developed the world of the Ewoks and the creatures that lived there. According to both Smith and Carrao, including principal characters like Han, Luke, and Leia was never even considered. Lucas's goal was to tell a story of the Ewoks and the Ewoks alone. As Carrao put it, quote, "People were expecting Star Wars on TV, which was what we never intended to do. We were much more interested in telling a story that was a more exciting and contemporary version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears."
Attention, Earth parents! Galactic News Flash! We're watching the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi. They're celebrating because kids everywhere love their Ewok family hut.
We can help the chocolate Skywalker. Hurry, Ewoks. Let's take the wagon, Princess Misa. The Ewoks save the day. Yay!
It's a galaxy of fun. The Ewok family hut and other Wicket the Ewok toys, each sold separately. New from Kenner Preschool.
Like Return of the Jedi before it, California's Redwood Forest doubled as Endor, and like Return of the Jedi before it, the cast and crew were populated with Star Wars cast and crew veterans. Longtime Lucasfilm conceptual artist, art director, visual effects technician, and Boba Fett's dad, Joe Johnston took on production design and second unit direction. Johnston was an ideal choice for all of those reasons, and other than Lucas, he was the closest thing to an Ewok expert, having just written the book, The Adventures of Teebo, A Tale of Magic and Suspense for Scholastic. Other familiar names included Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett on visual effects. Both had extensive experience working within the significantly lower budget of a 2-hour TV film. They built their careers in the early days at Lucasfilm on stop-motion animation, puppets, and other in-camera effects that didn't cost a lot of money. It was Return of the Ewoks, as Warwick Davis was back as Wicket, along with several other actors who played Ewoks in Return of the Jedi: Daniel Fishman, Debbie Lee Carrington, Tony Cox, Kevin Thompson, Margarita Fernandez, Pam Grizz, and Bobby Bell, all upgraded from generic Ewoks in Jedi to named Ewok characters in Caravan of Courage. Narration was provided by Burl Ives. He helped set the stage for things that were about to happen and clarified action for those who might have been too young to know for sure. His warm and kindly voice reassured kids who were watching that things were gonna be okay. This story takes place long ago, after all. Sindel was played by Aubrey Miller, while her brother Mace White Dude was played by Eric Walker. Despite 2 months on site, actual shoot times were restricted due to principal cast members being underage. Child labor laws put limitations on how long and at what times of day kids can shoot, not to mention providing for time to actually attend school. After the 8 weeks of shooting, director Cordy turned in his rough cut and moved on to another project. According to Smith, at that point, Lucas played a much more active role in the completion of the film, personally overseeing the final edit. Music was composed by Peter Bernstein. Is that right? I thought it was Bernstein. Anyway, the original score includes notes of John Williams' Return of the Jedi score, specifically the parts that are keyed to Wicket during Williams' Parade of Ewoks, which Bernstein referred to as Wicket's theme. The Ewok Adventure premiered on ABC November 25th, 1984. It was ABC's Movie of the Week and pulled in the second best ratings for that year in that time slot. For the European audience, it was retitled Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Adventure, and released for a limited time in theaters. Producer Tom Smith admitted that Lucasfilm never thought it was going to be anything more than a one-off movie of the week, but the positive US television ratings and the success at the European box office changed their minds and set them on to production of a sequel film despite ABC's hopes for an entire series. Ewoks Battle for Endor picks up about 6 months after the end of Caravan of Courage, as Sindel, Mace, and their family pack up and prepare to finally leave Endor. But before they can make their escape, the Ewok village is attacked by marauders seeking an ultimate power source that they think is the Star Cruiser's main power cell. Sindel's entire family is killed by the marauders, the Ewok village is burned to the ground, and every Ewok not named Wicket is captured and taken back to the marauders' fortress. As they try to figure out how to survive without their families, Wicket and Sindel encounter a curious woodland creature named Teak, who can move at super speed. Teak takes them back to a cottage where he lives with a crotchety old man named Noah, who also happens to have a starship in need of a main power cell to escape this plot-forsaken forest moon. They'll have to work together to save the Ewoks, recover the power cell, and survive the legions of soldiers led by King Tarek and his evil witch sidekick to win the battle for Endor. Caravan of Courage director John Cordy was already committed to other projects when production began on Battle for Endor. Lucas replaced him with Ken and Jim Wheat, who had already written, produced, and directed various film projects since 1979. They met with Lucas, who, again, provided the kernel of a story. This time, he thought, instead of a story about Sindel, Mace, their parents, and the Ewoks on a heartwarming adventure together, they should slaughter everyone except Sindel and Wicket and team them up with a stubborn old goat of a man, just like the movie Heidi, which he had just watched. Ken and Jim, the Wheats as I call them, cranked out a script and production began. Wilford Brimley, hot off 1984's The Natural and 1985's Cocoon, and Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, was cast as grumpy old man Noah. Perfect casting according to the Wheats, who have said that Brimley didn't like working with them, so Joe Johnston directed all of his scenes. Lucas was back in his familiar role, which included regular visits to the set to offer his input, approve artwork, and spontaneously add scenes that had never been in the working script. A surprise to the Wheats, but anticipated by producer Smith, who was already familiar with the quirks of Lucas's creative process. Battle for Endor aired precisely, definitely, exactly 1 year after Caravan of Courage on November 24th, 1985. Once again, the ABC Movie of the Week. Like the previous film, it was released to theaters internationally. Nobody's gonna get that. Despite the increase in action, stop-motion monsters, and colorful villains, Battle for Endor didn't bring in the same volume of viewers or ticket sales. Perhaps it was Star Wars fatigue, perhaps it was Ewok fatigue, perhaps it was Wilford Brimley fatigue. Or maybe it was the distinctly darker tone of the second film that did a 180 on the message from the first film, undercutting its message of courage, loyalty, and love being the strongest forces in the universe, replacing it with life's not fair, families aren't meant to be together forever, and everyone has to die sometime. A brutal handoff to the new Ewoks cartoon, which began airing just 2 months before Battle for Endor, and would continue to air 2 seasons of 26 episodes through December of 1986, the last new Star Wars television series before 2008's Clone Wars. Both Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor were released on VHS and Laserdisc between 1987 and 1990. In 2004, they were released as a double-sided DVD. In March of 2021, Eric Walker, who played Mace in both films, organized a petition that may or may not have been directly responsible for their addition to the Disney Plus library as of April 2021. Along with the previously mentioned Ewoks licensed merchandise, various Ewoks toys from Return of the Jedi were still available in-store, including plush dolls, action figures, vehicles, and playsets from Kenner, as well as new Kenner toys based on the animated character designs from the Saturday morning cartoon series. It's been nearly 40 years since both TV movies were released. A lot can change in that time, including the legitimacy of the stories contained therein. History burdens us with the responsibility of categorizing them without regard to their technical merits or franchise influence. Today, here, now, we must answer the question, is it canon? No! Disney uncanonized them with the purchase of Lucasfilm in 2014 and subsequent proclamation that anything outside the existing 6 films, the 2008 Clone Wars movie, and the Clone Wars animated series was no longer officially canon. Any notion of a consistent Star Wars universe before Disney's purchase was loose even in the golden age of George Lucas's authorship. That said, there have been Disney-produced media that have made direct and indirect reference to the 2 Ewok films, including the Survivors of Endor map in Battlefront that shows the Gorax Cave populated by spiders and a familiar cage. Are the Ewok movies bad? Debatable. Is it hard for them to hold the attention of modern viewers regardless of age? Yes, because they were made during an era when there was nothing but time to watch the same thing over and over again regardless of quality or technical merit. When you would replay the same tape because it was the only one you had, so much more time to just stare at anything on television because the era of choice and content saturation had not yet begun. It was either that or go play outside in the rain. Atari was fun, but deep inside we all knew it kind of sucked and the good stuff was locked away in the future. It was a Star Wars desert and any little piece of Star Wars was special. It wasn't like today where Star Wars is available in every corner drugstore, where they just hand out Star Wars to anyone who asks for it. Big Star Wars, little Star Wars, Star Wars for men, Star Wars for women. You only got a little Star Wars every once in a while as a treat, and you cherished it.
Here's some money, go see a Star Wars.
Today, the Ewok adventures are a welcome return to a magical time when George Lucas was in charge, when an orphan girl and her bear friend could conquer the greatest of evils with innocence, ignorance, and faith in something bigger. A force that flowed through everything, an energy that surrounded them and bound them together, something that they already knew. Courage, loyalty, and love are the strongest forces in the universe. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos ad-free, as well as behind-the-scenes features, sneak peeks at upcoming projects, and exclusive monthly podcast about the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy and let us know in the comments down below if you have any cherished memories about the Ewoks. I was around 10 years old when all this Ewok stuff was happening, so I was right square in the prime demographic to fall in love with those adorable murder bears. I remember going to our local Photon arena. Photon was the other laser tag. We did a video about it. Look it up. My brother and I went to Photon and had our helmets and lasers all ready to go, waiting in line to get into the game, and the other kid said, "Hey, who let all the Ewoks in here?" And I was really happy about that. 30 years later, I realized they were making fun of us. If those guys happen to be watching right now, I just want to say, nuh-uh, you are.
Cut.